All right, good evening, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to Liberia Shall Rise. This is a segment we are calling Uncover, and welcome to the second edition of Uncover on Liberia Shall Rise. Mr. George, how are you doing, sir? You are muted, Mr. George. You are muted. You are muted. You are muted. Unmute yourself. I'd like to hear your radio voice.
Good evening. Welcome to all our viewers and our guests and all those out there in Radio Land. It's good to see you again on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you are joining us from.
Dr. Positive, it's been a minute. I know you've been busy with family and friends. You've been busy with graduation. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
How have you been, my friend?
I'm doing well, and I want to express the same to every family out there. Congratulations to your children. Congratulations to you, to the family. You know, it's been a busy month, actually, and we're going all the way to May, June. So in the middle of June, we still have some graduation going on. So it's been good out here. All my tension shoes are working now. I've tested them, and they are working, you know.
Yeah, I think, you know, judging from what I know, Dr. George actually have graduation going on today too. So congratulations, Mr. George, and congratulations to all the graduates. Mr. Sapalucia soon graduated. Congratulations. There are big things happening on Liberia Shall Rise. So we say to our viewers, welcome to Liberia Shall Rise and welcome to this edition of Uncover. I will be hosting, and Mr. George is going to be hosting as well, alongside with Dr. Positive. And so, gentlemen, Dr. George, introduce the show we have. I know our guest is going to be here, but introduce to this show. You know, this is the second edition of Uncover. Introduce it.
Good evening. I want to welcome you again onto Liberia Shall Rise and the special edition of Uncover. My name is Emmanuel George, and I've been joined by my co-host and producer of the Liberia Shall Rise segments on Sunday, Mr. Augustine Sharif. You see, behind every story, there is a story. Uncover seeks to look beyond the news headlines to the developments that led to the news headlines. It aims to break the story into smaller pieces and knit them into the whole that will bring a new and better understanding to everyday listeners. The guests on this program will be experts and ordinary people facing the situation that will be discussed. We hope that as we tell these stories, policymakers will intervene and in the process makes Liberia a better nation. Because as always, we firmly believe that Liberia will indeed rise again. Today on Uncover, we will be looking at the just concluded February 25th, 2023 elections in the Federal Republic of Nigeria and what lessons Liberians can learn as they journey into the October 10th, 2023 presidential and legislative elections. You see, on the 13th of February 2023, a famous Nigeria professor, Chidi Odinkalu, a professor of the practice of international human rights law at Fletcher School and chair of the board of Global, wrote in the New Humanitarian that in 2023, 10 African countries are scheduled to hold presidential elections. Those elections are essential because humanitarian crises could be shaped by them. He names these countries as the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Gabon, Liberia, Libya, Madagascar, Nigeria, Sudan, South Sudan, and Zimbabwe. Our guest tonight is a professor of political science and the provost of Babcock University School of Postgraduate Studies. I will be grateful if you can welcome tonight on this show Professor Ayandiji Aina as he joined us on this segment. But before we do that, we'll have a short musical break. And after that, we have Dr. Aina, Professor Aina joining us.
Mama
can sit here and listen to the show all day. I mean, listen to that song all day, but I think we should bring our guest on. Let's get the show on the road. And there we go. We got Professor Ayandiji Aina. Professor Aina, welcome to Liberia Rise.
Thank you so much, my host. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's good to see you again, Prof. I'm glad that you accepted our invitation, and we look forward to having this conversation with you as we look at the 2023 elections in Nigeria. And no better person could we bring besides the renowned professor of political science. But Prof, as we take this journey, for those of you just joining us, this is Liberia Shall Rise. This is the program Uncover. I'm encouraging you to share the video to all your friends and all your loved ones out there. And there will be time we'll be taking phone calls into the program. So for those of you joining us, our guest this evening is Professor Ayandiji Aina. He is the professor of political science and the provost of the School of Postgraduate Studies at Babcock University. He has also served as vice chancellor for several universities in Nigeria, including Caleb University and the Ayandiji University. Professor Aina, you know, of the 10 elections, Nigeria elections was the first in the series of elections that we have in Africa. And it was also determined that it was the most crucial of all the elections going on in Africa. And that is not, that could not be lost on many of us who are of African academic setting, because we know that Nigeria is both a political and economic power in first of all, in the West African region, where Nigeria played a crucial role in the formation of ECOWAS, and the role Nigeria played also in the formation of the OAU, and the role Nigeria continued to play. So it's good that we look at these elections and then look at lessons that can be learned for Liberia. I know the next elections coming up is Sierra Leone in June, and Democratic Republic of Congo is also in June. But first, as we go into this narrative, I want to hear your personal opinion. Can you share your personal experience of the 2022 presidential and general elections in Nigeria? What was your personal experience?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. George. It's nice meeting you again online.
Yes.
I hope we get to see physically some of these days. Yeah, as you have rightly said, Africa is expected to have about 10 general elections this very year, and Nigeria is the starting point. With the 2023, February 25, 2023 presidential and national elections in Nigeria. As the saying goes, where Nigeria moves, you expect that most of the African nations will probably move in the same direction. That's like saying what happens in Nigeria will largely influence or characterize or determine or explain what you expect from the other African countries. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa, with an estimation of 1 out of every 5 Africans being in Nigeria. So the point about the 2023 election, to come back to your question, is an election that has been planned for a long time. It's one of the series in the latest attempt at democratic governance in Nigeria. The election held on 25 and the subnational government held later in March. And even though the elections are technically, largely over, but we still have some the judicial side to it, which is still ongoing. But the election, as you have rightly mentioned, is expected to be rancorous because of the multi-ethnic and multilingual nature of our country, Nigeria, and it actually lived to expectation. The point there is that we expect that there will be issues because no election will be perfect, and there are no perfect elections anywhere in the world. So the 2023 general elections in Nigeria was attended, by ethnic rivalries, some religious tension. The new dimension may be something like the area where the young people came in with some form of movements that attempt to change or alter the two-party nature or the multi-party structure that we have. So these are some of the little details that we can elaborate depending upon how you want this discussion to move. But the election, the elections have come and they are almost gone, except for the judicial side. But the new government is already installed in Abuja and in the subnational locations, and they are hitting the ground running.
Okay, there were 3 contenders in the Nigerian elections. Even though for most Liberians that are watching and most people who are watching, there was 18 candidates in the just held elections. But the 3 contender was Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who we know for his service as the governor of Lagos State, and then we have Atiku Abubakar, who served as the vice president of Nigeria under the Obasanjo regime, and before that he was the Controller General of Custom for the Republic of Nigeria, and then Mr. Peter Obi, who we know as he stood a tenure as the governor of Anambra State. So these candidates were high stake candidates in the elections, but there was the issue of chaos, widespread unrest, as many people could not access cash. So, and there was the issue of inflation in 2022. There was a high issue of inflation, increasing daily gunmen attacks, as we can see in the case of Boko Haram in Enough, and then a lot of innocent civilians were killed. So one who have thought that based on the record of General Muhammadu Buhari, that Nigerians who have overwhelmingly rejected the government of the APC, but then Nigerians voted not only the governor or the APC, but the founding father of the APC, because APC, when I know, was just a Southern party for a very long time, and when Tinubu started the APC and others, and then it gradually emerged into this political party, and it became the first party to remove the PDP from power. So, what is your take on this issue that Nigerians were willing to vote in a government that they have rejected? There were several protests in Nigeria against Buhari. In fact, many people said that many Nigerian scientists and political commentators believe that Buhari government was the worst government that Nigeria have ever had. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, thank you very much. In analyzing Nigerian politics or elections, one has got to, be careful of what you see on the social media. Because those of us who live in Nigeria, we have a better understanding of the situation in Nigeria, and that could be what you want to push out or the world to see as an insider. The late Chief Bola Ige, who was one of the frontline politicians of the Second Republic and the later Republic, once characterized the political parties in Nigeria at the time when they were 5 as the 5 leprosy fingers of one hand. 5 leprosy fingers of one hand, meaning that the parties have even though they were about 18 now, and we don't have 18 fingers, but they are more or less like you really can't find the deep ideological divide, and that is why most of the personalities that contested the election under these various platforms have, apart from Mr. Tinubu, most of them have gone through the parties. Let me start an example. Atiku has been in APC, has been in PDP, back in APC, and back. Obi has been in ABGA, he was in PDP, and now in Labour Party. It was only, and the 4th person is not only 3, there are actually 4 promising presidential candidates. Mr. Kwankwaso, Alhaji Kwankwaso, was also, APC, PDP, and then now NNP or something. So the point here is that apart from Mr. Tinubu that graduated his own party formation from the Alliance for Democracy, that's the AD, moving on to the Action Congress, then we have the ACN, and then with the CPC is the Congress People's Party or something, CPC, led by Buhari, was actually a breakaway from the ANPP, also of the old, and then you have Buhari leading that. A few members of the PDP who were referred to at the time as PDP, new PDP, and then Mr. Tinubu's ACN formed the APC, the All Progressive Congress. So the APC is really not Tinubu's party. It's actually a party championed essentially by Mr. Tinubu's ACN and Mr. Buhari CPC plus some of the breakaway factional leaders from the PDP, the ruling party. So it's like what you have in the Liberian state, the CDC. So when you have this election coming to place, they form, you know, a revert back to the Bola Gates 5 leprosy fingers of the same hand. The younger people wanted a new nation because they are tired of these old politicians, and they decided that the lesser of the, if you like, evils, not in the reasons of it, will be Mr. Peter Obi. And then Mr. Peter Obi, you recall that he was a vice president candidate to Alhaji Atiku in the 2019 election. So he was in the PDP. He actually moved from APGA. APGA is the All Progressive Grand Alliance, the party that had its roots traced to the late Chief Ojukwu.
Yeah.
You know, yes, the former Biafran leader. You know, so he moved from that because it's a regional party to the PDP to be vice president candidate. And when it was the time for the turn-by-turn syndrome to be the turn of the southern people, and the PDP changed that game. So he left, and he's leaving. Most young people believe that Peter Obi, you know, encapsulates, you know, the new thinking. Is probably not seen to have been neck deep into the corrupt practices that people, you know, felt or they can see, you know, largely speaking with the Nigerian nation. So the younger people saw in him somebody they can, you know, align with, and then he was going to do that under the Labour Party, a new party entirely that is not in the center of contention. So that's what we have there. So the three parties essentially that are four are usually more or less the same fingers of the same leprosy hand. There is no, for me, the difference is between 6 and half a dozen.
So, Professor, I know we are going to touch on this, but I didn't want to miss the point. As you spoke, I was taking notes here, and I want to go back to, you know, just looking at a report here from The Guardian, you know, and they actually reported that there was a very low turnout in the elections in Nigeria. Low turnout predominantly among young people. You know, most young people did not turn out to cast their vote. What can you attribute that factor to? Was it because of voter suppression, or was there something bigger that actually attributed to this low turnout in the elections?
Yeah, I think it's a, thank you very much for that question. I think it's a potpourri of factors, you know, a conglomeration of factors that is responsible to what you refer to as the low voter turnout. Number one, before the introduction of the BVAS is the electronic device to capture the number of voters and see that things are actually representative of the reality. There's an exaggerated, you know, concept of the number of voters that are available to vote in Nigeria because you don't have any means of verifying that. And the youth population that you refer to that are actually the largest in the largest voting bloc are passive voters or passive political entities. But for the fact that these NSAS and some of these youth movements that coagulated around Peter Obi, the youth are largely interested in education, technology, entertainment, sports, and the like, where they can make their, you know, their impact globally. And you can see that in sports, in entertainment, and in education when you're talking about ICT. Nigerians are there, medical, you know, all of that. They are never interested in political idea because they believe that there are some political godfathers that will not allow the space, you know, for anybody to come in. And so the few of the youth that you have in politics are not more than special assistant and all this PA and whatever. So the low turnout is actually, in my opinion, largely driven by the fact that we have an electronic equipment that is now capturing real time the number of people that are available for to vote. In the past, you have ways in which you have ballot stuffing and some of those things that will make in an environment where you have 3,000 people, you can have a return of about 7,000, exaggerated number. So the low turnout that we're having is partly or largely speaking a responsibility of the fact that we have a BVAS that is making it difficult for you to be around the polling center if you are not captured on the electronic machine. So that's it's more or less that. Plus maybe some other little factor in terms of voter intimidation in some locations in the west, in the east, and in the north. There are evidences here and there, but the large thing is the electronic equipment that now determine who should be around the voting arena.
So, I mean, if I understood you correctly, in your opinion, there was no widespread voter suppression.
It depends upon your definition of widespread. There's always voter suppression everywhere in the world. I was in the U.S. during the Obama election. I was also in the U.S. during the Donald Trump elections. And I remember, a lot of tactical way of saying they delayed the what do you call the
ballots,
the ballot by post, and effort to ensure that those who will vote will either be those who come around on the election day and have to, that's a more advanced way of voter suppression. So in Nigeria, when you're talking about voter suppression, you're talking about those things that politicians would do to ensure that they carry the day at the end of the day. So 2023 election is not different in any significant way from the previous election. In fact, it's far better than what you have in 2007, to be specific, the one that brought the late President Yaradua in. If we are talking about voter suppression and manipulation, that one stands out in recent time.
I think a follow-up.
So that is not to say that I have not said that this election is clean, but I've just said that it's expected that there will be manipulation, there will be this, but to give credit to the president, the former President Buhari, effort to ensure that you have something that will reduce, this voter manipulation were put in place, and even the opposition enjoyed it. And you mentioned, Naira, the design to ensure that there will be no vote, there will be lesser cases of vote buying and some of the other activities. These were practical steps,
Yeah, but to follow up on Mr. Sheriff's question, the fact that we're sitting here analyzing it, and you as a political scientist and we're throwing it on the table, is that only 37% of Nigerians voted in the last elections. Okay, so and Mr. Tinubu won only 10% of the vote, given that the voting population of Nigeria is only 3 million people. And if you calculate the vote of Atiku Abubakar, which was 29%, plus that of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, which was 25%, and Alhaji Rabiu Kakwaso, who had only 6% of the vote, that takes to 60%. And the challenge, and this also plays to what is happening in Liberia. The question I asked you previously also plays to what happened in Liberia, but the challenge is that the three of them, Kakwaso, Abubakar, and Peter Obi, were of recent members of the PDP. So if the three of them have found what were in a coalition, there was a possibility that 60% of the vote who have made whosoever was on the PDP ticket to win the elections. Do you agree with that? And is it critical if this arrangement, these coalitions, or this political coalition arrangement, is it something that is critical in elections in Nigeria also?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier on, 2 + 2 is not equal to 4 in the Nigerian election scenario or situation. What we have in the current 2023 election looks very much like the 1979 election that brought in President Shehu Shagari, where you have 5 dominant parties. And then, the issue of 12 2/3 and all of that came up. in this last election, as against the previous elections where you have two dominant candidates, we now have 3 or maybe 3.5 or 4 dominant candidates. You know, essentially you have 3 dominant candidates, one with 37, 29%, and 25%. But you cannot easily measure it and say, since the election result as we have it currently in our hands, places Atiku at 29 and Obi at 25, that if moved together, that would have been 54. And since they belong to PDP in the recent past, that they probably would have emerged something. That's why I'm saying 2 plus 2 is not always equal to 4 in Nigerian scenario. Because you will recall that even Atiku was a member of APC. It was his inability to get the ticket that moved him back to the PDP. And then Obi was formerly of ABGA. He could as well decide that he would like to go to APC, but he left for the Labour Party. So you can't easily mathematically just put Labour Party result with PDP result and conclude that if Obi didn't move out of PDP, that PDP would have had an easy result. There's a whole lot of dynamics around Obi, which is Obi is now coming up under a new party, and so the young people have a place to run to without any question. If Obi were to be the running mate to Atiku, I'm not sure all of the young people will go there, because both Atiku, Tinubu, in social parlance, they have the way people characterize them. Meanwhile, in reality, we need the legal side of it to be able to conclude that they are what you read in the newspaper or the social media. So, but young people who are social media savvy will probably not follow Obi massively if you were to be running mate to Atiku, because there's a baggage, around that candidacy, as you can see in the social media.
Okay, I have a follow-up. Then we'll take a musical break. Mr. Sherry, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question there. I'll let you do your follow-up, and I will do my question, and we'll do a musical break.
Okay, so even within that voting arrangement and the 37% with Tinubu only having 10% legitimate voting of the total Nigerian population, voting population, we also have this challenge, and Mr. Sherry have alluded to it earlier when he asked his question, because it is reported by the BBC and other, even the Guardian newspaper in Nigeria, the Punch newspaper in Nigeria, that those areas where Mr. Peter Obi and Mr. Atiku Abubakar was saying to be strong, you had delay in the beginning of the voter registration process. Some of them 3.5 hours, 4 hours. Some even started about an hour to the end of the election. They did complete at the time the election was supposed to end. Now we see this playing out that have eventually led to Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu as the president of Nigeria right now. But the question is that how can Liberian voters, because we may experience the same thing where you have the ruling establishment saying that these are the political strongholds or where the opposition can gain vote, and then all these checkmates are put in place, the late opening of the ballot, disenfranchisement of voters who have to go to work, because majority of the people who are voting, most of the people who are voting are people who have to look for the daily meals. They are people who live from hand to mouth, so most of them cannot stay on the line for an entire day, as we may see here in the West or other places. So they have only a few hours that they have calculated, and if the voting center is not open in 3.5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, most of the people have left to go back to the markets to fend for their daily living. So how do you think, as Liberians going towards our election or to attend, the opposition community can work to curtail these barriers that subtle barriers that are set by the ruling establishment?
Okay, maybe there are lessons that the Liberian nation can take from the Nigerian situation. Like as I told you, the Nigerian situation is akin to where you have preeminence or dominant control, you do and undo. That's what happens in Nigerian situation. But some people have upper hand than others. The truth of the fact is that, and you have it in the social media, the clips are already shown in the social media. It's only that it's more prominent in some areas than others. in the areas where each of these 3 or 4 leading candidates have their, what you can call their catchment area or the area of influence, there were voters in the intimidation, but you may be preponderant in some area because of the population and the flashpoint. For instance, in Lagos, all attention is in Lagos because Lagos is like one of the heavy, electoral, seat, that will determine who has the overall majority in addition to the spread. So you have a lot of that reported in Lagos, and especially because the youth in Lagos are up, to challenge the establishment. In the East, where Mr. Obi is exclusively having in all the 5 states 95%, 92%, 90%, the voters intimidated there still came on social media, maybe some sparing mentioned the social media. And then in the North too, where you have Alhaji Atiku, having dominance, you have that one there. So it's good for the Liberian nation to stand, up, against voter intimidation, whether it's done on a minute scale, like the Labour Party, or at a larger scale, as you can see reported by the PDP and the maybe APC. But that anybody is engaging in voter intimidation, even if you have intimidated only 10 people and the other guy has intimidated 2,000, intimidation is intimidation and it should be condemned. And so that's my position. Some of my colleagues didn't want to hear this because they have, an opinion of who they want to support, and that's good, but we should be able to stand as, if you are doing objective analysis, to say voter intimidation wherever it is found, whether it's 10 people are intimidated or 1,000 are intimidated or 1 million are intimidated, should be condemned at all sides. Nobody should be intimidated from how to go and cast your vote. And that's the lesson that Liberian people should, take note. As a political scientist, I took it upon myself to embark upon targeted trips that will enable and enhance me to have practical hands-on. That's why I started the Obama election, the Donald Trump election. And last year, I was in Kenya during the election there. Because I'm a political scientist, I want to be able to know what will I be teaching my students. And I want to see the social media is that the former president Uhuru Kenyatta was actually supporting the opposition element because they want to do a turn-by-turn thing against his own deputy. But eventually, the turn of the tide was against where the president was saying by body language and supporting his deputy won the election. They gone to court as well. So the point is voter intimidation should be avoided. At the point the Kenya people were going to have their final election result, the electoral empire, 7 of them, 4 were in one place and 3 in another. Meaning that even the electoral empire, there were divisions as to how to characterize the authenticity and the validity of the result the results that were to be announced at that time. So I think the Liberian nation should learn something from the Nigerian and the Kenya election by insisting that all votes must count, and then to decree, to denounce voter intimidation. Let whoever has the day, be allowed to convince people and have their way, which is what I think is okay. But for Nigeria, for you to say is the ruling party that intimidated people and won the election, that's a big lie, because that's not the reality. The reality is that the parties, all of the 4 major parties, manipulated election in whatever magnitude in their domain. That is the truth for those of us who live in Nigeria and who witness what happened. But at the end of the day, we have a result, and until the court says otherwise, that looks like a fair representation of what we have, although it's not the best.
Okay. Yeah, in your we'll take a musical break, but before we do, let me just pose this question before I forget it. Previously in your response, you had alluded to the fact that young people, they were tired, quote unquote, tired of all politicians. Mm-hmm. And I just came back from Liberia, so I know this is the outcry for my people as well. The younger generation, they are tired of the old politicians.
That's right.
And most of the time, when you talk to the young people on the streets, their tiredness is not because the older generation, they are not capable of being politicians, but they are not capable. They don't see them capable of being able to deliver what the young people want. like you alluded to, jobs, entertainment, sports, I mean anything that the young people can grab hold of to be able to go forward. And as a result, using Nigeria again, as a result of that tiredness or being tired of this old system, most young people, they just stay back. They stay back instead of going to the pool. They say, look, just let it go because it's not going to make any difference. So what message can you give to my young brothers and sisters in Liberia? What can you say to them instead of looking at the example in Nigeria and say, well, the young people did not vote, so Liberian young people were just going to stay home? What can they learn from you or from Nigeria before we take our musical break?
Okay, thank you very much. Coincidentally, I was discussing with two of my colleagues who are Liberians. They are in my graduate class, and we were cracking, jokes, and I was asking one of them that I hope the Liberian election coming up in October will not have already taken their cue from the US and Nigeria, because I know these are two countries that are, by tradition, strategic to the Liberian nation, foreign policy and all of that. The Americans and Nigeria have now decided in favor of the older people. I hope the Liberian will not take that as fait accompli. The point we are making here is not that older people have issues, but that the younger people are looking forward to having, new ideas, new whatever. We used to have a David Cameron in an Obama, a David Cameron, a Michael Macron in France, and on, even in some African countries. So if the young people believe that they want to have a paradigm shift, they should simply go ahead. But do that within the confines of logic. Convince people, convince your colleague, even convince the older people that it's time to give us the opportunity to do something. But if whatever comes out of the election, let it just be the true reflection, of the Liberian people. That's what I will cancel. Once the true reflection of the Liberian people can be seen on the ballot paper and the outcome, that will be good enough for Liberia. You choose. They say the people decide the kind of leadership they get.
Mm-hmm.
So if you decide to change, do a paradigm shift, you decide that. If you decide to stay on with the wisdom of the elders, as we call it, the African balance, you also get what you have. Maybe you have another 4 years when you will have a rethink if you have decided right or wrongly. So I would not say, youth, go ahead and take over the nation. I'll say, youth, go ahead and act your mind. Convince other people to follow you, and whatever you get, you have another opportunity, maybe in 4 years' time, to decide or to rethink again if you decided wrongly.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Today we are discussing the election that just recently ended in Nigeria, and we are trying to look at similarities and what lessons we can actually gather for the upcoming election in Liberia. So continue to share the broadcast. We'll take a quick musical break, and we will come back to continue with our guest, Professor Aina. Stay tuned.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Love is all we need to make you see. This is the time to come together. Keep Liberia safe forever. So open up your heart, let the unity begin. Love is all we need to make it stand. Let's cultivate one another. Learn to live together as brothers and sisters. Without togetherness, we won't have no peace of mind. Unify and have a peaceful, sweet Liberia. Land of liberty is our home. Keep it sing.
All right, right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the broadcast. We are here today with our special guest, Professor Ayandiji Aina, and we are discussing the 2023 election that just took place in Nigeria, and we are looking at lessons that could actually cross over to Liberia. Dr. Positive, welcome to the platform. I know you've been back there. You have some burning questions for our guest. So go ahead with your question, and then Dr. George will continue our interview.
Dr. Aina, thank you again for coming on. But my simple question is this our platform even says Liberia should rise. Somebody just said Africa should rise, right? And the reason we say Liberia should rise is we have to put in steps in place, put processes in place to make sure that everything is fixed, right? So the election that happened, they said Aina had a glitch in their electronic system that caused the election to be quote unquote fraud, right? So if this election went on and it wasn't successful because of the failure of technology, do you think at some point, from your experience in Nigeria, do you think this will be fixed ever in Nigeria, where we can have a free and fair election where the youth vote can really be counted, or where even elders, people who take their time to stand online for a long time, where their vote can be counted? And if Nigeria, right, Nigeria, the biggest, most popular country in Africa, cannot make that successful, and even one of the richest countries in Africa cannot make that successful, do you think that may be possible for Liberia? Do you think Liberia will be able to have a smooth election using the same electronic system? Should we then have a backup paper trail that we can count every vote after the election is over?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think there's also, I mentioned earlier on that there's a social media stereotype that is ongoing, that all is not well in Nigeria. Yeah, I can say that some things are not right in Nigeria, but to say that all is not well in Nigeria is a misquote. That's my humble opinion. And what do I mean by this? Our electoral system, electoral administration system, has moved over the ages and the time to get to some form of reform that is actually noteworthy. That INEC failed woefully to fully implement the beavers and then the online result upload. Is not to dismiss that Nigeria has advanced strategically towards having credible election. Now the beavers machine is already accepted by both opposition and the ruling party as strategic equipment that has come to do something in terms of defining who gets around the voting arena. But the problem with INEC in this election is that using that beaver that has done that much to now conclude is like the icing on the cake. The icing on the cake is that the machine has been able to capture everybody. There are very minimal cases of, I can't find my name on the machine, they are taking away the register, very minimal cases. But when it comes to deploying it real time, that is the issue. Then they said they have glitches. And so the glitches will be resolved, and then the result will be uploaded as we resolve the glitches. That is the major problem of this election. There's nobody that, largely speaking, the beavers has played the role for the huge investment that we have there. So whether the glitches in the upload, which is the major issue now, is human-made or technical, whatever, we will allow the court to decide, and God to be the ultimate decider, whatever way the court goes, because they have that jurisdiction. So to say that we have not advanced, for me personally, is just to be emotional, unnecessarily and unduly emotional. We have really advanced. We moved from the time of Operation Wete, where you just bamboozle people out to option A4, where you have to queue behind your candidate and everybody will see where you belong. Option A4 during the Wosu time, several years ago, up to where you have to say, let's have open secret ballot, up to where we now say we need electronic intervention. Electronic intervention, we need to have it with a fingerprint and all of that. Now we have beavers. We have really advanced. What we now need is the human, the political will for the electoral agencies to have done all they need to do to fully implement the investment in the beavers to the point of real-time upload. Okay. But the beavers work to the point of the election, the polling booth area excellently. But they were not able to upload, they failed to upload, technically or humanly speaking, we don't know. So that's the point I'm making. So we will advise the Liberian nation to ensure that they also find a way to have an electronic device or whatever is suitable for your nation that will allow the real vote to count, that will allow no ghost around your polling booth, that there will be real human being with flesh and blood flowing in their vein, and then with the ability not to be intimidated to just cast their vote without being harassed. That's what we will ask the Liberian nation to copy from Nigeria, copy all our technological breakthrough, but advance in the area where we have failed to get it, and ensure that there are no voter intimidation across all the parties, whether ruling or opposition, and ensure that the vote counts, that people can stand by their vote and ensure that the result represent the true desire. That desire may not be in my favor, may not be in your favor, but once it reflects the true desire, Democrats will have to agree with the outcome of such election, and there will be less tension.
Thank you. Thank you.
Professor Aina, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu's slogan for this election was, and I hope my Yoruba is still good, was Emulokan. It's my turn.
Emulokan.
It's my turn.
Yes, right.
And it's my turn politics seems to be getting popular in Africa because we see the same thing in Liberia right now, where certain candidates believe it's their turn, supposed to vote for them. And he won on that slogan. Many thought that it was a bad choice of slogan for him to have selected. And a lot of political commentators have said that choice was bad, but he won on that choice. Do you think that it's my turn politics is becoming popular in Africa and something that we need to do away with?
It's my turn politics, depending on how you look at it, is a global phenomenon. Donald Trump believed that it was his turn to be American president, and he says America must rise again, or whatever, American first.
Yeah,
American first
again.
And he dislodged all the guys in the Republican Party that are populist and whatever, and he became the candidate. And today he's still a leading force in the Republican Party. The Emulokan, aphorism used by one of the presidential candidates, the one who is now sworn in as president, is actually can be subsumed within the circulating elite theory. We teach political science, and we have what we call the elite theory. The elite theory is to the effect that the elite, in any society, a small group of people will be in charge, will always be in charge. And those small group of people can be thrown up either democratically, by spontaneously, or otherwise. They can come up anyway. And within the elite theorizing, we have what we call the circulating elite. The circulating elite is that once an elite is thrown up through a power ascendancy game, that elite structure or team seeks to consolidate power and to entrench its dominance and presence, or its hold or grip on power. You remember the PDP, when they came in 1999 in Nigeria, there's a popular thing that they will rule for 60 years already. They have one, we are going to be around for this number of years. That's Emulokan, perpetuity syndrome. And when you go further deeper down, there's the circulating elite tells you how the elite distribute power, and now determine who is next. Then the issue of godfatherism will come into the place, where the godfather will be the one to chest up and say, Iwolokan, you are the one, it's your turn. Go and sit down, it's not your turn. So what Tinubu, did was to turn Iwolokan to Emulokan. Iwolokan means is the godfather standing up to say, it's the turn of A and not B. and the A will just make noise and do all that, it will never be his turn if the Godfather has not said his turn. But the Godfather is saying this is like a transmutation of the African concept of the kingmaker never become the king. So he practically went to Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital, to enact that thing that there's always a time for a change from kingmaker will not become a king to it is something will actually come to stay one time. And that's not new to Nigerian politics. In one of the states in Nigeria where the University of Ibadan, where I did my university, it's a tradition that a governor will not serve more than one time, even though the constitution allows twice. But the late governor, the former governor, the immediate past governor, served twice, and the current governor is also serving. So there will also be a first time, and that's exactly what Tinubu made. It was only good for him to be able to change the scenario that was rolling against him to create a popular culture aphorism that will galvanize his electoral context. I don't think it actually means more than that. What we know is that this man has been a very meticulous politician, since the Abiola days, essentially. And during the military gulag, he was in the trenches, promoting oppositional element, and he has calculated the day, and he has never hidden that from anybody, that his desire is to be the president of this nation. So by saying, look, he was merely repeating what he has been saying in the last 30 years, that it is right now his turn. And especially in 2019, 2015, when he supported President Buhari to emerge as the flag bearer of the newly formed APC, which is a coagulation of many parties. He had to drop off the presidential ticket, joining with Buhari because of the Muslim ticket. And we were made to understand that there was a gentleman understanding that, okay, stay back, because we don't want a Muslim ticket, it will be your turn. So he was merely coming up a few months ago to say, we had an arrangement, it is my turn. So if you have for those who are global audience, that's probably one side to understanding Mr. Tinubu's Milokan aphorism. It doesn't have to be what we carry on in Africa.
So if we follow the Milokan, it's my turn syndrome, and come back to what he did, there is something critical here, and you may agree with me, especially when you went back to the APC election. The Nigerian society voting has been over the last, since 1999, since democracy came to Nigeria, elections have been either ethnocentric or religiocentric. So therefore, if the standard bearer is a Christian, like Obasanjo case, then the vice standard bearer is a Muslim, like with Atiku. Then the same thing with Buhari and Professor, his vice president, the name would come, Professor
Olusegun,
yeah, as his vice president, because he's Muslim, he's Christian. But for the first time since Nigerian democracy started in 1990, the recent democracy in 1999, we have a Muslim ticket. And this Muslim ticket won the election. Only 37% of the voting population voted, but the Muslim ticket voted. We still have the same challenge in Liberia. Like recently, there been this ethnocentric Congo versus native argument in Liberia. And we have one of the presidential candidates in Liberia who has a ticket that seems, in quote, though technically it's not, it's a Congo ticket, and it's creating all these ethnocentric noise. So what lessons do you think this impact that Tinubu have made, which seems to be, in my opinion, positive, but because the first time that the Nigerian nation since 1999 have voted a Muslim ticket as to lead a country. So is Nigeria getting rid of this ethnocentric, religiocentric voting pattern, and can Liberia learn from that?
Yeah, I think everywhere in the world, every reasonable observer should be able to promote the interconnectedness of peoples and nations and cultures. To that extent, people should support multicultural and multi-religious collaboration of interest and coagulation of interest. it should be in my interest, for instance, to ask that in the power configuration in Nigeria, in Liberia, everywhere in the world, that where you have religious diversity, it should reflect in the way we select our leaders. Where you have ethnic diversity, it should reflect in the way we select our leaders. And that's a normal advice. But the point that we need to take note is that politicians go to election to go and win, not to go and decorate ballot box or ballot paper with diversity. Diversity is good. I hope you get my point. But politicians go to election to go and win. And in the case of Nigeria, many people have shouted at the rooftop, even those who are not members of APC. They are offended that Tinubu, allowed a running mate that's of the same faith, religion. I asked them, if you are not a member of APC, what's your worry? You simply mobilize your member to the other party to go and win and condemn that if it's not acceptable. By the way, this is not the first time that we have a Muslim ticket. There was a Muslim ticket with MK Abiola and Babcock in 1993. That was the freest and fairest, by popular standard, election in Nigeria so far. Even though the election did not conclude because the military junta truncated it. But Abiola and MKO won that election fair and square, and the subsequent government have accepted that fact, and in fact Buhari honored MKO posthumously. The point I'm making here is that in the 1993 election, which is symbolic, 1993, 2000, and now 2023, it was symbolic that we have a Muslim ticket because MK Abiola was contesting against a Muslim, guy, Alhaji Basil Tofa from Kano, another heavy electoral base. But MK Abiola won with the Muslim ticket in Kano, won in many locations. So the issue really in the final analysis, as we get out of this ethnic and religious sentiment, will be when are we going to sit down and look at what is the dividend of democracy, and how is the ordinary man and the common man beneficial or made to be active beneficiary of the outcome of governance. That should be the central point. But in the power allocation or allotment, we may want to look at diversity, but ultimately diversity should not be sacrificed at the level of mediocrity or non-performance. What we have in Nigeria is a diversification of non-performance. We have diversified, and at the end of the day, we have nothing tangible to show for it. So for me, as a human being, I don't mind who comes to power if he's not going to come around and impose his religion on me or his ethnic group on me, but do the will of the people. If we have a Muslim like we are now seem to be having in Nigeria, if they deliver, they will receive my applause. But if they fail, I will be part of those who will voice out my opinion that they have failed and they should never be given a chance again. So we have had a combination of Muslim, Christian. We have not seen the benefit of that outcome. In fact, there was a time we Nigerian people felt that President Goodluck Jonathan should come on board. The minority have been searching for a long time. Now that they have opportunity of being the acting president after the late Yaradua, he should be supported. Everybody from everywhere supported him. What did we get in turn? Massive misgovernance is what we got in turn. And the money that were lost under the government, until we accept the Buhari section government, we will never know what level of this the other entities of government that made away with our fortunes and all that. So the point here is that it's good to diversify, to spread, and that is not limited to president and vice president alone. The powers that be, will not reside exclusively with the president and vice president. There's a National Assembly, and that's the debate going on now. That come June 14, when the National Assembly leadership will be thrown up, everybody seems to agree that that point has to come into play now. That there must be the number 3, number 4, we should think of that as we go ahead so that we don't end up to say we just need quality. That's why even the number 3 and 4 now should still go the same way. So there are ways in which we can do ethnic and religious balancing, but what should be primary, in my opinion, is who is able to deliver and who will deliver. And that's very important for Liberian people to also take note of who will deliver. If you eventually have a Christian or Muslim or whatever combination, once they will be able to deliver, I think the Liberian people will know when to vote for them and when not to vote for them.
All right, Professor Aina, we want to say thank you so much for taking your time to be with us today. We promised you 1 hour. We just gone 2 minutes after the hour. So we just like to give you this time to give us your closing remarks. And in your closing remarks, please, if you can just highlight some of the pitfalls that my people, my country, Liberia, should actually avoid as they look forward to this election in 2023. Please.
Thank you very much. As we close this session, I would like to appeal to the Liberian people that they need to allow a free and fair election. I'd like to appeal to the Liberian people that all votes should count, and anyone who is emerging through popular will, whether it's satisfactory to establishment or not, should be allowed to form the next government. I would like to appeal to the Liberian people that they can demonstrate that the Liberian people can be the harbinger of hope for the African nation, and they don't have to necessarily allow the election to be tainted, in whatever coloration like we have in Nigeria. Even when you have the eventual winner reflecting still fairly the reality, any election that is tainted, is negativity, and that should be avoided at all costs. Thank you.
All right. On this note, we'd like to say thank you again to Professor Ayandiji, Aina. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here, and we will certainly love you to come back here because we will continue to do this analysis as election 2023 goes down to the wire. So again,
thank you so much.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today. And on that note, to our viewers, we say thank you for joining us. And until next week, we will see you on another edition of Liberia Shall Rise. Stay tuned. We'll see you.